America's place in the world is being tested on several fronts at once, and late April 2026 has turned into a moment where trade, security, migration, energy, and technology are all colliding. In Washington, policymakers are trying to project strength abroad while also answering a simple question at home: what kind of global role should the United States play in the years ahead? The first major pressure point is the U.S. relationship with China. Trade tensions remain one of the clearest symbols of wider strategic rivalry. The debate is no longer just about tariffs or imports. It now includes supply chains, advanced semiconductors, electric vehicles, data security, and the race to dominate the most valuable technologies of the next decade. American officials continue to argue that economic resilience is now a national security issue. Chinese officials, meanwhile, frame U.S. restrictions as an attempt to slow China's rise. That means every shipment, every export control, and every new industrial subsidy carries political meaning far beyond business headlines. At the same time, Europe is watching the United States very closely. NATO remains the backbone of transatlantic security, but the alliance is under strain from war costs, defense spending debates, and uncertainty about how long America is willing to shoulder such a large share of the burden. European governments want continued American commitment, especially on deterrence and intelligence, but they also know they may need to build more independent military capacity. For Washington, the challenge is balancing reassurance with pressure, reassuring allies that America is still engaged, while pressing them to spend more and move faster. Another major flashpoint is the Middle East. U.S. strategy in the region is being shaped by energy routes, maritime security, and the risk of wider escalation. The key question is whether Washington can deter conflict without being pulled into another prolonged crisis. Shipping lanes remain critical to the global economy, and any disruption there quickly affects oil prices, inflation expectations, and political confidence far beyond the region itself. Diplomacy remains active, but the margin for error is small. Even limited military actions, sanctions moves, or proxy attacks can change the temperature overnight. Closer to home, the Americas are playing a larger role in U.S. foreign policy than many people expected. Border security, cartel violence, anti-smuggling operations, and migration enforcement have become international issues as much as domestic ones. U.S. pressure on partners in Latin America has intensified, especially around narcotics trafficking, intelligence cooperation, and maritime security. Supporters say this shows a more forceful American posture in the hemisphere. Critics warn that aggressive tactics can create legal, humanitarian, and diplomatic backlash. Either way, relations with Latin American governments are no longer a side story. They are now central to how Washington defines security. The global economy is also sending mixed signals to the White House. American officials want to protect domestic industry, secure critical minerals, and reduce dangerous dependencies, but they also need stable markets and lower consumer pressure. Investors are watching U.S. growth, interest rate expectations, energy costs, and the durability of global trade networks. When Washington tightens controls on strategic sectors, it may strengthen long-term leverage, but it can also raise short-term costs. This is why economic policy now sounds more like geopolitical policy. The old divide between foreign affairs and financial affairs is disappearing. Technology is another arena where America's global influence is being tested. Artificial intelligence, cyber defense, quantum research, and space systems are no longer niche topics for specialists. They are pillars of power. The United States still holds major advantages in research, capital, and platform scale, but rivals are moving quickly, and allies are demanding a say in how emerging technologies are governed. The fight is not only over who invents the next breakthrough. It is also over who writes the standards, controls the chips, protects the networks, and earns international trust. So what does all of this mean for the rest of the world? It means U.S. foreign policy is entering a more transactional and more crowded era. Washington is trying to confront China, manage allied expectations, contain regional crises, secure its own border, and defend economic advantage at the same time. That creates a strategy that can look strong in one theater and overstretched in another. Friends of the United States want reliability. rivals are testing for hesitation. Markets are reacting to both. There is also an important political layer underneath these global moves. Every foreign policy decision is now filtered through domestic opinion, election narratives, and economic anxiety inside the United States. Voters may support toughness abroad, but they also want lower prices, less instability, and fewer open-ended commitments. That makes American power look more conditional than it did in earlier eras. The United States is still one of the most influential actors in the international system, but it is operating in a world where leverage is expensive and credibility has to be renewed repeatedly. As of April 28, 2026, the story is not that America is retreating from the world. The story is that it is trying to redefine how it leads in a world that is more fragmented, more competitive, and less forgiving. From trade with China to security in Europe, from Middle East risk to Latin American pressure points, Washington is facing simultaneous tests that are tightly connected. A decision in one region can shift markets in another and reshape alliances somewhere else. The next few months will show whether the United States can turn pressure into strategy. If it can align its economic tools, military commitments, alliances, and technology policy, it may preserve a strong global position. If it cannot, the result may be a foreign policy that feels reactive instead of deliberate. For now, the world is watching America not just for power, but for clarity. One final point matters here. The biggest question is not whether America still has power. It does. The question is whether that power can be organized into a strategy that is consistent, credible, and sustainable. If Washington can keep allies close while managing competition in crisis, the United States will remain central to the global balance. If not, more countries will hedge, diversify, and prepare for a more uncertain international order.